Good evening, and I would like to thank you all for joining Faith in Place's monthly story circle. Before we introduce our guest, Veronica Kyle, I would first like to extend an invitation to those present that if they or someone they know wants to share their story of migration, they can be one of our featured guests. If you would like more information, please contact me at princess@faithandplace.org. I would now like to introduce Veronica Kyle. This is exciting because not only is she sharing her story of migration, she is also the creator of the Migration and Me program here at Faith in Place. Veronica will share experiences of how her family migrating from the South influenced the idea of the Migration and Me program. Veronica has also spent time in the Caribbean and South Africa. If time permits, hopefully she can share her experiences. Now, if anyone has any questions, you can add it to the chat and we'll ask them as this time proceeds. So, Veronica, how are you this evening?
I'm great, and I see some friends. I saw Rand on this call, Jenny, Velma, I'm meeting Ellen. This is awesome, thank you. You could be anywhere this evening and you're actually here. How awesome is that?
Yes.
Thank you, Princess, for that introduction. And we have Katie Maxwell on our communications team. We would not be doing this without the communications team helping to put these together. Thank you for this opportunity. I want to start by saying, for me, it's always an opportunity and a privilege to be able to share our stories. And as we get a certain age, I'm just gonna say, it's even more important to have these oral traditions. Everything now is so much technology, but very often we don't get to talk about things like this. So thank you for the opportunity. You're always a little modest when people ask you to share your story, but I actually look at it as a privilege of some oral history. And Princess, just before this call, as I was preparing to talk, I thought about one of the elders that is still living that was so influential in my childhood, my aunt Bernice Campbell, who's now in Arizona. And I called her and thanked her for all that she has given and continues to give. She is the historian of our family on my dad's side. And we actually went down memory lane. So with no further ado, I will start this by saying, I am a child that was born in the 50s in Anniston, Alabama. Anniston, Alabama, this little small town, about 45, 60, depending on what side of town you were, up to 60 miles outside of Birmingham. It was later known, and still is known, as Monsanto's cesspool. It was very much a place where chemicals were dumped. And my family, many of them the houses that we grew up with were deemed uninhabitable. And Johnny Cochran, the late Johnny Cochran, that was one of the last big cases that he had, was in Anniston, Alabama. And my paternal step-grandmother was known as having the largest amount of PCB in her body of anybody in the whole town. Nearly all of my family that passed away died from some upper respiratory lung disease. And those who are still alive, many of them suffer for that. So I grew up in Anniston. Of course, being a child, you know nothing about being a cesspool. It's just your family. So I grew up, my grandfather, Jonas Brown, with hogs in the backyard. And, I always say, they said, what did the hogs eat? I said, they ate what we ate, because they ate the scraps of our food and molasses and, Johnny cakes. I have, pancakes now, but we had Johnny cakes. And I remember seeing cured, pieces of meat and, watermelons look, big as this and sweet and juicy, and peach trees and pecan trees and, peanuts. And I bring all this up because you grow up in a situation like that and you take nature and your environment for granted. This is how you ate. Everybody canned peaches, and there was shucking peas and collard greens, and and I never thought about food. I guess we might have been considered poor. I don't know. We ate well. I even ate the red dirt. Probably shouldn't have done that. But mud pies, red dirt, butterflies and birds. What? I mean, nature, climbing trees. But Anniston was also known for some serious systemic racism things. The Freedom Riders who rode into Anniston got their bus burned and bombed and the crap beat out of them, right? Um, we were right next door to where after King died in the 60s, we were here. We watched the world saw what was happening then. But in Anniston, that little town, the segregation was real. And I look back now, I knew the word colored before I knew my name. Why was that important? Because if you were out and you were thirsty, even though I was told not to drink from that fountain because it was dirty and they never cleaned it, but I knew that word meant that I, as a young, at that point, you all, that was before we was Black, they called us colored, okay? But that's where I had to drink. Why is that important? Because it has everything to do with the migration story. Families were moving from the South, moving north for better. And I realized that my young parents, super young, my mom and dad married. Mom was 17, dad was 19. I guess that's what you did back then. You went to high school, you married your high school sweetheart, he went over to the service, and you lived happily ever after. So they married, and I was born that same year. Got married. So they grew up being parents, right? Grew up being parents. But I look back now, they had dreams and ambitions, and those ambitions meant that they were not going to raise us in the segregated South. So we leave Anniston and we head to Atlanta. That became a pit stop for 2 years. I realize now my dad was following his mother. So my paternal grandmother, Elamar Hunter Campbell, lived in Atlanta with her new husband and three of my father's siblings from that second marriage. We moved to the Grady Housing Authority. Again, him being a veteran, those were the places, the doors were open, also the segregated South. So we moved to Grady, and I go to kindergarten through second grade to Grady Elementary School. Formative years. I don't remember my first grade teacher or my second, but Miss Davis, who was drop dead, beautiful Black woman, was my kindergarten teacher. And she was so dedicated to us. And I went to school, my parents, my mom, they worked so hard for us. Miss Davis would turn our names upside down. It's funny the things you remember at 5. And she would make you recognize your name backwards and upside down. And she said, wherever you go, I want you to know your name. Well, I took it upon myself to learn everybody's name backwards and upside down. So needless to say, for instance, I would get in trouble because if a kid was struggling with their name, I would whisper, at least I thought, David, it's David, it's Bernard. So early on, I had the gift of gab. The notes came home that Veronica talks too much. Go figure, look at me now, right? But what was really interesting about that was something my dad said to me in kindergarten, and I never forgot it. I was selected to be the queen of the Maple Parade. The South, they have a lot of parades. And I had something I had to say, like, I'm the queen, the kindergarten Maple Parade, welcome everyone, right? And so I said, okay. Well, when I go out for recess, my friends say, I'm not going to play with you because you think you're something because you're the queen of the Maple Parade. Well, when you're 5, you just want to play with your friends. So I was ready to dump that whole queen thing. So I go home with a bag with a costume in it that my grandmother's going to have to alter. And I tell my dad and mom to write a note. I said, write a note. I don't want to be the queen. And my dad said, why is that? I said, because my friends won't play with me. They said, they think I'm something. My dad is sitting there, and I remember this like yesterday. He's very elegantly spoken. He said, Veronica Brown, that was my maiden name. Veronica Brown is nothing. And he just paused. Or here's Veronica Brown and she's something. So which one will it be? And I said, I'm something. He said, you're somebody. He said, you're a leader. You're a natural born leader. That's why you were chosen. And go back and be the best kindergarten maple queen you could be. So I strutted back to school the next day, Jenny. And they come time for recess. I said, I'm somebody. And I'm the queen and I want to play. And they said, okay. I mean, that was my first, political statement, I guess. I don't know. My first form of advocacy. Why is that important? Because the values in the African American community against Jim Crow, against segregation, was you're somebody, no matter what the world says, no matter how other people might look at you. You can be anything you want to, work hard, put your mind together. So now we're off to Chicago. But before we head there, those who know me know that I like fashion. I like clothes. And I look back, I got that from my dad. And you're going to see a picture of my family in a minute. I'm with my grandmother, and I think the department store was Davidson or Davis. It began with a D in Atlanta. And I see a velvet coat, hat, and muff in the window. And it's just beautiful, Velma. It's like this little girl on a mannequin. I just could see myself. And I said, Mother dear, can you go in there and buy me that coat? It's so beautiful. And I don't even know if we could go in that store. I mean, looking back now, I don't know. I could have went, and she said, I'll make you one. Now, I didn't realize, because I saw the sewing machine humming all the time in my grandmother's, and she could sing her face off and piano. I didn't know that she was such a renowned, good seamstress that a white woman saw her drapery work, hired her. The white woman had been commissioned to do a room in the governor's mansion then, hired my grandmother to do the curtains, and the governor saw the gift of her interior design and had her do another bedroom that she never got credit for. Now, I don't know that. She's just my grandmother. So I find this stuff out when I'm good and grown, right? But she had an old pair of green velvet drapes. She put me on a table. She measured me. I watched her cut and measure, and voila, in a couple weeks, I had the baddest little velvet coat with the little hat, tam, that little beret, and that muff, going to church, strutting my stuff, so happy. And I look back now, another message that came out of that was, you can make it happen. You can make a way out of no way. And you don't know that then, you just absorbing all of this strength from your family, but I've done it with my own children. I've done it. She never told me no. She didn't say I couldn't afford it. She didn't say we couldn't go in there. She said, I can do that. You'll get that. And my regret, I just told my aunt, is what happened to my velvet coat? I'm mad now. What happened to that? Because that should have been a family heirloom, right? But I guess my dad, Atlanta, this is now, I was born in 54, so this is now 7 years is 61. Things are getting hot and heavier in the South. King is out there. We migrate north to Chicago. And I remember by now, darn, I'm mad. My best friend is Audrey. She lives next door. Why are we moving? You don't want to move when you're a kid. You just want to be a kid and play. Gonna leave your friends. And my dad said, I'm taking you north. This is important, you guys. So you can get a good education, so you could use your head, not your hands. So many Black people in my age group and beyond heard that. And it had incredible impact on how you looked at certain labor, even how you looked at agriculture and farming, right? But I realized why he would say that coming from the South. And I could tell you for years and years and years, it was nothing you could do to make me put my hands in dirt, because I felt like I needed to honor my dad with intellectual capital. And he was like, you don't have to use your hands. I'm going to make sure you get an education to do that. Now, from his perspective, using your hands meant menial labor, hard labor, low pay. I got it. We've come a full circle when we talk about urban gardens and planting food. It's a certain age group. I still can't get out in the garden because of that those kind of that mindset. So we moved to Argyle Gardens, but before we get there, we're in Inglewood, and the host family is now my maternal father, my maternal grandfather, Albert Conway, and his new lovely younger wife, Irene Conway. We called her Madia. And I grew up with my grandfather and his new wife and my mother and father having babies at the same time. So my aunts and uncles, with very few of them, I'm older than they are. People thought we were cousins, but we were really, I had 2-year-old uncles, go figure, right? And a 2-year-old brother at the same time. So we're with them for a short time, and then we moved to Argyle Gardens where we settled. We were, when you come through migrating, you need hospitality. And when I talk about the monarch butterfly, that's what the Migration and Me program came about. And I will share while I saw the similarities, Princess, between us having milkweed in our yard for them and collard greens on the table for me, okay? It's all about hospitality and familiar. So we moved to Argyle Gardens, and I'm starting 3rd grade, and I get into the 4th grade, and we know all hell breaks loose. We all get sent home because JFK gets assassinated shortly after we got here. And not long after that, Martin Luther King, whatever. But part of the migration story is for your family to take a picture to show that you made it, and prosperity, and that things are different. And I'm gonna ask Katie if she could pull up this picture. That's my family, you all. And that's me with those cat-eye glasses that we had gotten the week before the picture. And I wouldn't smile because my dad was determined that I wear those glasses. He was so proud that he was able to do that. And I just want you to just take a moment and just look at this beautiful young Black family. Look at my dad. He looks like Denzel movie star, good looking, right? And my mom, just beautiful. And they were so freaking young, 6 babies, you guys. She was 26 and he was 28. 6, and one soon was coming about 1.5 years later, maybe 2. Tammy is on my mother's lap. My brother Franklin is in between. He was the one who passed away, you guys, since I've been at Faith and Place about 3 years ago. My sister Lisa, and I'm behind Lisa. Rosalind, still a daddy's girl, even though my dad's been gone 26 years, is in his lap. And there's my brother Dwayne, my rock, and he lives in Arizona. Thanks, Katie. You can put it down. It just brings me to tears to just think about that journey and to have all of those kids and all that promise and uncertainty against some incredible times in our history. But around that table was the message that you could be anything, you could do anything, look people in the eye, no one's better than you. Sometimes the table had beans and cornbread and a little bit of meat, because you always had to say the biggest piece for your dad when he came home from work, right? That was just the way it was. And sometimes we were eating, as my dad would say, high on the hog, Velma. We'd have the ham or the pork chops or the roast or the potatoes, always dessert, whether it was Jell-O or something, you had some dessert, right? But you also had no weight problem because you were outside from sunup. And that was the whole thing about the natural environment. We leave the South where I'm outside all the time and I'm climbing trees, and I come and the little girls in the city, in the concrete, they had on cute little clothes and they played hopscotch and double dutch. And they call me a tomboy because I climb trees. They also call me country because I talked a certain way and, had that Southern twang. And in other words, I soon learned that nature and outside meant different things in urban settings where getting dirty and having red dirt and getting washed down in the wash tub, the metal tub and stuff, or all of us in the bathtub in the South was very different coming north. So I go to Argyll Gardens. To this day, it's known as the Toxic Doughnut. It's on the edge of the city, surrounded by the docks, the steel mills, and everything in between, including the forest preserve that we didn't dare go in.
Hey, Veronica, I want to pause you right there for a moment. I just had I want you to elaborate on what do you remember as a child that connected you to nature,
Wow.
comparing that to Alabama and Chicago.
Chicago. Oh, wow. Thanks. That's a good question. Everything. I mean, Alabama was lush and green, and I walked on dirt road. I didn't have sidewalk. I mean, dirt road, and everybody is sitting outside on the porch and under the tree. And I remember, the men like shaving the wood, and there was hunting and rabbits, and that used to scare the heck out of me. They would come back and have the rabbits hanging around their waist, and the truck with the catfish. I remember food being hunted or fished, cured, readily available. I remember people going out to pick the greens and you ate them that day, or send you out to get green tomatoes to fry. Playing outside in the bush was just the way it was. We used to call them sticker bugs, and they would be sticking all over your clothes and whatever. The katydids and grasshoppers. Nature was just a part of my existence. I started to see a little less of it coming to urban Atlanta, right? And by the time I got to Chicago, I mean, Argyll Gardens, listen to the name, gardens. You would think flowers are everywhere. And there were big places and spaces where there were flowers. And we had a front and a backyard, but there was no green, lush, sweeping trees hanging all over everywhere. Our playgrounds had concrete. Now, I didn't grow up with swings and all those things in Alabama. The first time I started doing swings and stuff like that was to my memory, was in Atlanta. But concrete, as a matter of fact, my little sister Tammy, that was on my mom's lap, she crawled up on the slide, and before we could get her, she fell off and fractured her skull because she fell on concrete in Argyll Gardens. The playgrounds were concrete. Some people grew flowers. Miss Todd and Miss Bear had rose bushes and flowers, because I knew if you threw your ball in their yard, they would come out and scream at you for stepping on their flowers. So there were these patches of nature, Princess, to your, but it wasn't, my world changed to big buildings and tall, buildings and lots of concrete. I saw more concrete than I didn't even know existed. Thank you for asking. Now I realized that the forest preserve we were backed up against the forest preserve. The difference, though, is that often as Black people, you're told not to go in the woods, because for us, the woods has a bittersweet, sweet memory. We have picked the fruit, we have hiked, and we've been strange fruit in the woods. So you're just told, don't go in the woods, stay where I can see you. This is also, I'm born 1 year after Emmett Till was murdered. So just imagine, families not trying to tell you to go anywhere where they cannot see you. My brother, like so many curious little boys, my brother Dwayne takes my little brother, and all the big brothers take their brothers to the woods on a regular basis in the gardens. And they would go and they would make a tent, and they would bring their dogs sometime. And sometimes they actually would come back with rabbits, right? I go to school. I'm at the University of Iowa, and I get a call. Your brother has been shot, Dwayne. Shot, oh my God, come home. I go home, Fortunately, he's still alive. He lived to tell it, but he went to the woods. He's with about 8 other little boys, and there are some men in the woods with rifles. Maybe they were doing for sport, shooting something. He doesn't know to this day. He said he just remember this group of men turned and looked at them. And he said there was one guy, he said, he said he looked like he could be the devil. He said we were kids, but it was an evilness and a smirk on his face. And he turned back to the other guys and said something. Dwayne instinctively told all of the little boys to start running. He was the last one behind, and he said he felt the jolt. They start shooting at them and calling them derogatory names. And she said, I couldn't stop running. I just knew I would die. He made it to the highway and collapsed. And another white man who drove up in a truck, and my little brother and others were screaming, he pulled over, helped my brother in, and took him to the hospital. So that kind of sealed the deal for us going in the woods. People in the gardens, it was like, oh, that's it. Dwayne Brown's been shot in the woods. Didn't I tell you all not to go there? They don't want us there. Stay away. The next time I was in the Forest Preserve, I was a grown person with a family reunion, period. End of discussion. That, that just kind of ended the wood story. So thank you for bringing that up. And when I realized all the beauty and all that was there, that we basically felt uncomfortable, many of us to take advantage of, it made me sad, because nature is a healer, right?
Mhm.
And no one should be denied nature. No one should be denied. This is God's gift to everyone. Now,
Okay,
every chance I get, I take it to get in nature.
So that being said, and I've noticed that a lot of us have been told that, like, not to go in the woods, don't go anywhere by yourself. What created that change for you to go from being afraid to being a champion for getting people of color out into the woods and to represent the nature, because that was us, wasn't it? I mean, we were nature people, and we went to being scared and, not being invited to the table to speak about what happens. So now we're making that circle again. But what made you realize that, wait a minute, we're missing in this scheme of things, and how do we get back there? So what changed your mind?
I realized that's a really good question. When I met my husband of 45 years now, we were on campus and didn't have any money. And I realized now he was like trying to romance me by just walking me in the woods and in the park. He didn't really have no money, y'all, but it just seemed so romantic. And, I felt really, protected with this tall, 6'4", tall, dark, chocolate, handsome man. And we're walking in the woods in the moonlight and the woo-woo. But what it did was, it was an awakening in me. I was like, oh, wow, this is beautiful. And I was like, do you do this all the time? He's like, oh, yeah, I run through the park. I'm from the West Side. The West Side guys thought they was tough. I run through the park. And, he was a wide receiver, the athlete. And so I don't even know if he realizes, but that courtship kind of reintroduced me, Princess, to, the natural environment. And we always took our kids to the park, and we took them to concerts, and we started taking kids to camp through the United Church of Christ. They have a strong camping program, and we would take kids to camp, and we would do camping programs. And then when we started working overseas, you had mentioned I was in Caribbean and Southern Africa, the connection to nature again, much more concentrated, much more of a natural fit, particularly in Jamaica, right? You kind of don't go anywhere when you got papaya and coconut and bananas just growing, mangoes in your backyard. I mean, you just, I used to say, if I'm going to be homeless anywhere, send me to the Caribbean, because I can just eat off the street, right? So that connection, William and I were working for the Overseas Division of United Church of Christ. We worked in a community called Hellshire, which was right off of a beach, a public beach. And by the way, When we go to these resorts and we love them and we see sandals and all that on TV, those are private beaches, and most of the residents in those countries never can afford to be there. They're only there because they're working. And so we have to be, and most of the local people just don't own those. So that's a whole nother story. And I came with now American privilege. I could be at the private beach, the public beach, I could afford it. But we would do things in Hillshire. So William and I, my husband's a UCC ordained pastor. We were, co-ministering this church. We started doing our baptisms in the sea. We started having sermons on the Rastafarian beach, and that's because there was such this natural connection. Everybody was in nature all the time. The young people, the playing outside, the making soups, the getting herbs. And I realized this is who we are, not who we were. This is who we are, Princess, to your point.
Mm-hmm.
We just got that lost, and even colonization couldn't get that out of us, right? So you go certain places and you see the strong connection to nature where people never left it. So thank you for asking that.
Okay, so what drove you to the Caribbean and South Africa? And as you were there, how did nature and healing connect? I know
Oh,
you mentioned
wow. Yeah, I started doing women's retreats, but I started for myself first. Our house was so close to the water that you could just hear the waves at night. And I remember just being able to go to sleep, like the water just put me to sleep. To this day at night on my app, on my phone, I play Caribbean water, or my husband loves rain and thunder. So for me, nature just kind of became this healer. We would come back to visit in Chicago, a family, and they would go, "You guys look so calm. You look so young. You look so refreshed." But we realized we were outside a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We were eating a lot of fresh fruit and vegetables. And we were walking more because it was so beautiful and you wanted to be outside. It was we walked a lot. We walked the beach, we sat, we participated in, I started having I ran a women's group, and we would do healing circles and story circles right on the beach, right? And while the fresh fish and the festival fried bread was waiting for us, or the banana, the fried banana, or papaya juice being made. And so that connection, just like this natural connection, I realized I looked better, I felt better. I went to Jamaica with the worst case of insomnia. I'd had it for 15 years. My husband tells me now, ever since I came back, he said, when you say, "I'm going to bed," you lay down. He said, within 3 minutes, you're gone. Well, that happened in Jamaica, Princess. That happened. And I believe it was because of that natural environment. Now, South Africa was a little different because, I lived in Johannesburg, incredibly urban, but filled with a natural environment. So I could look down where I lived in a valley, and it was just beautiful and lush. And there were all these places to go, and people got away. They called it holiday, and they would go to nature. They would go to Durban, to the beach, go into the mountains, go and get away from, that was the norm. And by the way, we work too hard here. Christmas break for your job. First week in December, you come back, Jenny, January 7th or 8th. Us Americans, let me tell you,
working to the day before.
the first year, William and I and one other American, we're gonna decide we're just gonna go into the office anyway and catch up and get a head start on our work. Because, oh wow, this is so awesome. A whole month, we don't need that. And the executive director came in to get something from his office on his way to holiday. And he sees us 3 Americans. And he goes, "You Americans just don't get it. Princess, why you just dropping dead? And we're like, he said, go home. It's holiday. We see you next year. It can wait. Are you Christian? And at this point, we were like, yeah, I'm feeling like a little kid. He said, this is a Christian holiday for us. And that means no work here. Go home. I was so embarrassed. We picked up our little stuff. He said, no, 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 no. Leave the work. Go home. So we get in the car and we go, what just happened? Somebody just kicked us out of work? Am I in heaven already? Is this real? Oh my God. So they didn't have to tell us twice. After I was there 4 years, and guess what? The first week in December, December 2nd, we kiss you, we say happy holiday, and we see you January 8th, 9th, or 10th, period. So love it. And it reminded me again, because he was like, you need time to rest. And they all were going to natural places to do that, right? Like getting out of the city, going away. They call it going to the country, where their families are from, or going to some kind of resort where there was nature. So for me, coming back and realizing the disconnect, when the Migration and Me program, I created it when I started learning about the monarch butterfly. Coming from Michoacan, Mexico, on his journey to Nova Scotia, and then it would be fourth generation monarch going back to Mexico. And I heard this story, and an incredible program officer, Mike Rizzo, shared so much and gave us so much knowledge about the monarch. And I was, thinking, wait, this sounds familiar. I said, what are they migrating for? Well, they're getting out of their habitat and they're moving to Nova Scotia. And on the way, they need to find their host plant. Host plant, milkweed. This is the only one where the female lays her egg underneath the milkweed. I got up about 3 in the morning one day. I got so tired of trying to talk to Black folk about nature and going outside, and we connected, and we need to care about this. And I wrote the Migration and Me program based on the fact of my migration and that of the monarch butterfly. They're migrating for better. They go back fourth generation, and then I counted my grandfather, my parents, me. My children were the first ones I took back. We're now 4 generations. I said, look at God. The beautiful monarch and Black folk, we got this in common. Milkweed, let me see this milkweed. And I began to look at this milkweed and I said, this is their lifeline. And I am unapologetically a country Southern green eating Black woman. No apologies needed, okay? Collards, mustard, turnips, spinach, bring them on. Cal, what? All of that. So I said, let me make this story make cultural sense so people could know that we have a responsibility to host this insect, this beautiful creature. If we don't plant that, they don't eat, they don't live. So I had a host. It was called My Chicago Family. Albert and Irene Conway took us in. And when we was received, those familiar smells were in that house. I remember right now, collard greens, fried chicken. I could smell it, Velma. I could smell it. And my brother, he's like, who are these people? And I said, I don't know, but they must be family because I smell our food. You see, when you're a kid,
Right.
when you're a kid, you try to make sense out of things from a perspective of a child. And I'm thinking, I plant milkweed, you all know, in my yard because guess what I do? Hey, somebody said, go and chat with the milkweed because I want them to say, I don't know them people, but they must be okay because I see some milkweed, all right? So I think that's the least we could do, Princess. That's the least. So, and also tell our story. Because the monarch can't tell their story. We have to tell that story, right? And there's a lot more to that story. I've learned so much. Our, former Migration and Me coordinator, Reverend Debbie, went, you've gone, Princess, to the Monarch Institute and studied. I realized that the male when the female is pregnant, lifts her up and puts her up high to protect her. I've used that and talked to young men and said, hey, you need to be protecting this woman. If the monarch can lift up his woman and put her up until that baby's born, you need to step up, young man. If the butterfly can do it, you can do it. And so we can learn so much from Mother Nature. You know, all seriousness, so many life lessons, right? And this is just one of them. So to me, this is like a full circle reality we're facing right now with climate change, systemic racism, the pandemic. The one thing we can do is keep being the best stewards we can of our common home.
Right.
It's all we got. This is it.
Yeah.
You know, the world can't make us any more water. And if you think about it, we can't make air. I'm saying, I can't make anything that I need. You know, I can't make 1 ounce of air.
No.
We can't get any more water, right? So we need to really forget these party lines, racial lines. We need to come together and say, okay, we all living under this roof of Mother Earth. What are we gonna do? It's time to, like, you know, that's why I get so sad about, everybody's so worried about November 3rd. We all got to be under the same roof no matter what happens on November 3rd. So for me and my folks, we just gonna keep trying to be the best stewards we can be and conserving, because we're gonna need to do more. I think it's gonna get a lot better, a lot worse before it's ever better. I may not see it better in my lifetime, but I'm gonna tell you who I do it for. And Katie, can you like show them my 5 shining stars, please? This is why I do it, people. These are my grandbabies. Emil, and he's holding Brianna, his little sister, and his middle sister, Briley, is on the floor looking. That's my Serena Williams right there, you all. That's my athlete. She's my golden ticket. If I could, you know, live long enough to see it, she's gonna be a champion somewhere. And that's my miracle baby, Hannah from Hope, that Morgan, who's our true miracle superstar, just told me that she wants me to book her on Steve Harvey because she got something to say right now, Katie, right now. But this is why I do it. This is it. Because they have inherited our mess. And I just want them to know they're Go-Go. Yes, I go by Go-Go. It's an African name for grandmother. And it sounds way cooler, guys. I'm sorry. I love sounding. Go-Go just sounds so cool. So when I heard that in South Africa, I said, whenever I have grandkids, they're going to call me Go-Go. But I just want them to know that Go-Go and Baba, we did everything we could to save your common home and to make sure you have clean air, clean water, all of that. Oh, Amy, you want to squeeze them? That's what I do. That's why I'm so mad at this COVID thing, because I can't really kiss my babies the way I want to. Thank you, Katie, for showing that.
Okay, well, I guess you summed it up, because I was going to ask what is, in closing, what was your hopes for the Migration and Me program for the future? And I guess you wrapped it up.
My hope was that people would, thank you, chat. Oh, wow, look at that. You go. My hope was that it would still be around. I had no idea why or how. Princess, you and others have taken it to a level beyond my wildest dreams. I'm looking at Velma and others who participated in Migration and Me activities. We're taking people camping. We're taking people camping now, okay? We have urban gardens. People are planting food. My grandbabies have benefited from that program. They're so sad they couldn't go to camp this summer and be in those cabins, Jenny. I mean, they were so looking forward to that. But I put a pop-up in my backyard. We faking camping, y'all.
That's okay.
So I got a pop-up in there right now. And I'm decking it out bohemian style because I'm a hippie at heart. And so we're just gonna do our thing. Hey, Ran. Hey. It's my buddy. I'm so honored that you would be on here. So I just want, and just so you know, Rand with some of these are friends. There's friends on this call. Some of the people that affirmed the Migration and Me program from the beginning. Jenny and I have had so many talks about race and relations, all of them. And this is a journey that we're all gonna have to be on if we're gonna make this world better for like my grandchildren and others and whatever. And I just thank you, Princess, for, you know, providing this space and then for me to share this story. Oh, I'm gonna cry. This is my daughter. Why did she come on? It's so funny. You can get accolades from everybody, but when you get them from your children, especially when you have done everything in your power to give them the vision that they can be anybody that they want to be, but to do right by the world, do right with nature, with each other. You want to lay down every night and say, I did the best I could today. I don't know about tomorrow, but today I did the best I could. Or some days, like, you know what? Dear God, I did the best I can and I fell short, but I'll just get up and try tomorrow. And I want to say to anybody that's on this webinar that we got work to do. And we have no idea in a few weeks what the world will look like beyond November 3rd. But guess what? As long as we're still breathing, we have a responsibility to do everything we can to make it better. And I really don't want to spend my energy post the 3rd thinking about what's wrong. I want to be focusing on what I can make right. And I thank you for this opportunity.
Right. So in closing, I just want to thank Veronica for sharing her story. And I just want to also thank Veronica for, I just have to say that before I even applied for Faith in Place, I went to school to get my degree in environmental studies, and I was getting ready to give up because I could not find a job to save my life. And I still didn't have faith that I was going to get this job. I have sent in my resume. I don't know what Veronica saw in that resume. I was like, I'm not going to hear from them. But she gave me a chance. And I just want to say that I truly appreciate it. And she has always been a champion for me to find the best within myself. And, you know, I just want to thank her for that, you know. And I mean, I'm a testament that, I just want to thank you. I mean, I don't think I would have got that chance through anyone else, you know, and I just want to thank you. I don't know what else to say.
Thank you for joining on the journey. When people come on your journey, they come for a reason. And sometimes we don't know what it is, but I saw the light, even if you didn't see it in yourself, and it's still shining and it's more to come. And I'm looking so forward to one day, like I've truly passed the baton, like, woo, 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 and I can just be on the side, complete cheerleading. I am so grateful for this opportunity. And I look forward, I've enjoyed your Story Circles, Princess. I'm looking forward, I don't know who's next, but I will definitely, if I can, be there to listen because I grow every time I hear someone's story. Black, white, brown, everybody has a story. None of us started where we are now, right? None of us. So I thank you for the opportunity. I don't know if there's any questions, but I truly appreciate this opportunity.
All right, so if there aren't any questions, we are going to close out. And like I say, we want to extend a grateful thank you to Veronica for sharing her story and her inspiration for the Migration and Me program. And I want to thank all the participants that came to hear our story. And again, if you or you know of anyone else that would like to share their story, please contact me, princess@faithinplace.org. Thank you.
Thank you.